And one of the reasons that individual freedoms are pickpocketed away from a population is because the population doesn't know what their freedoms are. They don't know what their liberties are. So if you have something in your house that you don't know anything about and I steal it, you don't know you're missing it. Right? You have no clue. And so I think it is absolutely vital that Christians know what our natural rights are, first of all, and those supersede any kind of government rights that we've been given. And in Scripture, the Bible says, in specifically Psalm 33:12, blessed is that nation whose God is the Lord, and the people whom he hath chosen for his own inheritance. Blessed is that nation. The word blessed means happy. It's like in the Beatitudes, blessed are the pure in heart. The word means happy. As a matter of fact, it's plural. Oh, the happinesses of. And so what we're going to do tonight, this is week 3, and I'm going to try to keep up with you here on your handout. Let me give you principle number 5 or 3. Oh no, it is 5, and then I've got some stuff I want to share with you, and then we'll move on. Matter of fact, I need a book off of my desk. Let me get this book. It is required that I have this. Sorry about this. Were not taken out of the Constitution later. These are the things that our founders believed that were inserted into the Constitution. And so, number 5, all things were created by God, therefore upon him all mankind are equally dependent, and to him they are equally responsible. The framers of the Constitution were very well aware in their writings and in their speeches that the basis of all reality, all ultimate reality, was the existence of God. It was their position that this was common sense. Everybody should have enough sense to know there's a God. It's just like you tell your kids, you should have enough sense to know not to slap your neighbor. Don't do that. I mean, why would you do that? Common sense tells you that that's wrong. And so they knew that God was, number one, the designer. They saw design. Now, not all of our founders, and there were about 250 of these men, not all of them were what we would call fundamental Christians. Some of them believed that there was a God. Benjamin Franklin has been accused of being a deist. Early in his life and early in his career, that's exactly what he was. But later, he came to understand that God was a person, not just the swamp gas of the force in the world. And so truth is true, whether we believe it or not. They knew that God was the cause of all things. Now, truth doesn't require belief to be true. You can believe it or not, it doesn't make any difference. And in our culture today, it's like, well, I don't believe that, therefore it's not true for me. Well, yeah, it doesn't matter whether you believe it or not. Truth is true for everybody, the same truth. And so Thomas Aquinas said, whatever is moved must first be moved by another. Creation itself has movement and flow to it. Who moved it? Well, exactly. But, you know, there are people who say, well, there was this massive explosion of this microscope. Where did that come from? Who triggered the explosion? How did all of these things ultimately begin? If you have a a pile of wood, and you say, well, the fire is what warms a bit. Where'd the wood come from? Who gathered the wood? Who put it in the stack? Who lit the fire? Somebody was behind all of these things. And so John Locke wrote in an essay entitled Essay Concerning Human Understanding, he says that it is not reasonable to believe that creation came into being out of random circumstances. And John Locke was exactly right. We live in a universe, not a biverse or a triverse, but a uni. What does uni mean? What's a unicycle? One. All right? The word verse means to turn into. So what did God do with all of the various elements of creation? He turned it into what? One unit that we call the universe. Somebody did that, and God is the one that did that. And so universe just simply means something turned into one. One particular unit, one particular system, and God was behind that. And so the founders believed that somebody made the universe. It is so obvious that there's intelligence in the universe. There's complexity in the universe. Beyond complexity, there's specified complexity in the universe. Let me give you an illustration. Let's say that you're walking through the woods and you see a pile of wooden letters in the middle of the path. That's complexity. You see all the letters of the alphabet. What can you safely assume about that? Okay, somebody put it there, either accidentally or on purpose. Somebody made them. Do you also have the idea that somebody knew the alphabet? Knew how to make an A and a B and a C? Okay, that's complexity. Or let's say the next day you're walking through the same section of woods and you come to the same part in the path and you see this made out of wooden letters. I love you. That's beyond complexity. Now that's specified complexity. This universe is complex. There's no question about that. But there's specified complexity, and I'm looking at it. The eye is one of the most phenomenal organs in the body that is designed by specified complexity. There's no way that systems can evolve over hundreds of thousands of years when system one depends on system two to even exist. And so when you look at how God has designed this thing, it actually becomes laughable, I think would be a good word. But let me give you some scientific truths about this matter of matter. All right, now, matter is just the things that everything is made of. All right, wood, water, these things are matter. All right, number one, matter can neither start itself in motion nor stop itself once it's in motion. How'd your car get in the parking lot? You drove it. How long will it sit there if you didn't drive it again? Yeah, exactly. Somebody would have to move it, right. But if I put this pen on this front pew, where will it be next Sunday? If nobody messes with it, where would it be next Sunday? It'd be right there. If it's on this pew come next Sunday, what do we know for sure? Somebody moved it, exactly. And so matter can neither start itself in motion nor stop itself once it is in motion. Once you get something moving, it won't stop unless something stops it. That something could be the law of gravity, the law of friction, but something stops it. Number two, matter cannot change its own shape. I put this pen on the front pew tonight. Next Sunday morning, what's it going to be? Why won't it evolve into an eraser? Because matter cannot change its own shape. These are, I think, some death blows to this idea of evolution. Number three, matter, if altered, tries to return to its original shape. Give you a simple illustration. We've probably all watched tennis on TV, right? Have you ever seen somebody hit the ball and in slow motion, really slow motion, the racket hits the ball, ball's coming in, and it hits the ball. What happens to the tennis ball? It flattens out. You ever seen this happen to a golf ball? I've seen an ultra slow motion of a guy hitting a golf ball. It's not as advanced, but the golf ball. What in flight back across the net, what does the tennis ball attempt to do? Why doesn't it evolve into a volleyball? It's trying to evolve into nothing. It will return to its original shape. That's the nature of the way things work, and that's the way God has created things. So this idea of evolution, well, it starts out as a single cell, and then boom, here we are. Violates the way things are in the created world. Number 4, matter cannot evolve or morph into another shape. It cannot. There is no primate in our lineage. None. Our founders were very aware of that. God was in existence when everything was created, so that tells me that God is external of his creation. If we say that God was part of the creation, you've got a logical absurdity here that God created himself, which is impossible. And so God existed outside of time. He existed outside of the creation. He has involved himself in time and has involved himself in creation, but he exists outside of these elements. All right? God existed. So in the book of Colossians, chapter 1, somebody turn and read Colossians 1, 15, 16, and 17. Let's just say there is an unidentified cause of creation. And so whoever gets that, read that. Yes, sir. Okay, so if we have a creating element somewhere, Paul has just identified that creating element as Jesus Christ and has referred to him as the firstborn of all things. And therefore, well, there it is. God created Jesus Christ. And the word firstborn does not mean the first one born. It means preeminent. So who is the preeminent person over the created realm? Well, it's Christ, all right, because it was created for him. It was created by him. So if it was created by him, who did he create it for? Himself, exactly. Let me read you this is on page 94 in the book here. Locke says, well, I think I may even have the quote here, that a man that claims to be an atheist has failed in his capacity for reason and observation. Okay? Now, John Locke, from what I've been able to understand, was not a Christian man. But John Locke even recognized there is precision, there's intelligence here, and it bypasses reason to not admit that God has created these things. Now, we've got to be honest about this. Does God exist? And, of course, we as Christians, our default answer is, well, yes, absolutely. But do we know some of the reasons why? I mean, could we sit down with an atheist and talk with him with some specified intelligence, some complex, necessarily, intelligence? Let's say that this represents everything that, and we talked about this, I believe, in Sunday school this morning. That's all knowledge and a little test that I find interesting with somebody that says they're an atheist. How much of everything do you know? Actually, not much. So a person that claims to be an atheist, they may not admit this. You can't make that claim, by the way. Now, let me give you an illustration of why you can't make that claim. Can I make the claim there is not a $100 bill in this auditorium? I can make the claim, yeah. Does that, how would it be true? What's the best I could say? As far as I know, there's not a $100 bill. And what that really means is I don't have a $100 bill, okay? That's the bottom line of that. So can an atheist say there is no God? No. That's a claim to omniscience. And so if he makes that claim, the great question then becomes, is it possible that God exists and he doesn't know it? Is it possible there's a $100 bill in here and I don't know it? Well, sure, that's possible. Sure, it's possible. Is it possible? So if he's intellectually honest, at least you've upgraded him to an agnostic. But I don't believe in atheism. I don't believe in atheists. I think it is a bogus claim that cannot be proven. Well, neither can a lot of things, but this is one of the big things. And so it is not possible to make that claim. I've not been to every planet. Maybe there's a God out there. I've not seen that. I've not been to that planet. I've not been to that dimension of the universe yet. But it is absolutely an absurd claim. Now, the dilemma of the atheist is it possible that God exists and this guy doesn't know it? And if he agrees to that, then you have upgraded him to that. But only one person truly knows everything. So who's the only one that is qualified to say God doesn't exist? God is. And so God is the only one qualified to be an atheist. And again, he has said several times in the Word, the fool has said in his heart that there is no God. All right?
Well, this atheist, as far as he wants to know.
Do what?
He says there is no God as far as he wants to know.
Yeah, he doesn't want it. Yeah. All right. Blackstone believed that God was knowable as a person. God is not a force. The Star Wars series is all about Zen Buddhism. And this idea, may the force be with you kind of a thing, the universal mind, of course, is not in one person. And the Greeks many, many years ago, matter of fact, before Christ was born into this world, the Greeks believed in what was called the Logos. This was a very significant part of Greek culture, and their idea of Logos was the mind of the universe. That the universe, the physical universe, was a living being, and that it had a mind, and you're part of that living being. It was inconceivable to a Greek for the Logos to be identified as a single individual. That would just blow the Greek mind completely away. Well, John 1:1. In the beginning was what? The Word. All right, the Word is Logos. And so here was a man who claimed to be this Logos in human form, and one of the real hurdles of the Greek world accepting Christ as the Son of God was this claim that he was a Logos, when actually that's exactly what he was. All right, on page 98, let me read you something here. The founders considered the whole foundation of a just society to be structured on the basis of God's revealed law. These laws constitute a moral code clearly distinguishing right from wrong. This concept was not new with the founders. This was the entire foundation of all religious cultures worldwide. It was particularly emphasized in the Judeo-Christian structure of the English law. No authority on the subject was more widely read than William Blackstone. He established the classes for the first law school at Harvard in 1753. His lectures on English law were published in 1765 and were widely read in America as they were in England. In his commentaries on the laws of England, Blackstone propounded the generally accepted idea that, quote, when the Supreme Being formed the universe, end quote, he organized it and then impressed certain principles upon that matter from which it can never depart and without which it would cease to be. All right, it's like you make a big cookie and you get your initial little thing and you impress JK on there. All right, it's impressed into the very matter, the dough and the sugar, so that it's part of that cookie. So what Blackstone is saying is that the universe has certain laws impressed in it. We call this natural law. Natural law is impressed in the universe. You can't negate natural law. You cannot deny natural law. However, contemporary society is attempting to do that very thing. When Clarence Thomas was being grilled before he was nominated as Supreme Court Justice, this was the thing that was a real problem for Clarence Thomas. He believed in natural law. And the subcommittee that was investigating him and grilling him did not. Now, why would contemporary politicians not believe in natural law? Exactly. If we go into something with already prescribed laws, then that kind of leaves us out of the picture. And governments don't like that. They want to impress on the matter of the population and the culture what they think is right and what they think is wrong. So, quick conclusions about the first cause. Let's just refer to the Creator as the first cause, right? Number one, he would require an ability to create. Archie, go back to the alphabet piled up in the middle of the path. All the letters carved out of wood. Did somebody have the ability to do that? Answer is yes. Did somebody have the ability to make this pew? The answer is yes. Did somebody have the ability to make the clothes you have on? The answer is yes. Yes. And so whatever did this had the ability to put this together, had the ability to make the sun hot and the moon a reflector, had the ability to create wind currents and ocean currents. I mean, there had to be an ability. Number two, it would require an intention to create. Now, if that pew is in existence, what does that tell you besides somebody had the ability? Somebody wanted to do it. Exactly. Somebody wanted to do that. So, whatever the first cause is, had the ability, because it's here. Number two, they had the intention to do it because it's here. Number three, it would require nothing for its existence. If at one time in history nothing existed except this first cause, what caused him to be in existence? Nothing. And so God existed before anything existed. And he acted as the agent from outside of creation. Number four would be transcendent to the universe. God didn't create himself. Again, that's a logical absurdity for us to think that. And so here are four quick conclusions about what we know as the first cause. Everybody got what you need? All right, principle number 6. All men are created equal. All men are created equal. Where did they get that idea? This was not a European thought, by the way. Okay? The Europeans thought, here's the king, divine right of kings. Then you've got layers of culture. Look at India, the caste system. All right? You've got people that are superior. This is not a human idea. And so we're told everybody's created equal. Now, how can everybody be equal? Well, we're not equal in skills. I can't dunk a basketball. So I am unequal with LeBron James. He's more equal in that area than I am. We're not equal in goals. I don't want to be the first man to walk on Mars. That's not a goal. Now, somebody, that may be just the passionate goal of their life. So we're not equal in goals. Do we have to be equal in skills, habits, goals, dreams, taste in things? No. So apparently, that's not what it means for everybody to be equal. How about do we have the same outcome in income? Does everybody make the same amount of money? Does everybody live in the same kind of house? Does everybody drive the same kind of car? Does everybody have the same everything? No. Well, then we're not equal. Yeah, we are. In some very significant ways, all right? And those ways are three. Number one, we are equal in the sight of God. Is there anybody in this world that is more valuable to God than anybody else in this world? No. I'm no more important than anybody, and neither are you. Your family is not more important than my family, and this individual is not more important than that individual. We're all equal in the sight of God in that respect. Number two, in the sight of the law. Now, this is where I think we've fallen off the wagon here. People are not equal in the sight of the law. Depends on who you are and how much money you have, how much influence you have. This has been a bone in my throat for, 30, 35 years. Ted Kennedy should have spent the rest of his life in jail. If either anybody in here had done what Ted Kennedy did, that's exactly where you'd be today. You would have been convicted of leaving the scene of an accident with death. That's a pretty serious charge. And for the little ones in here that don't know, Ted Kennedy got drunk one night, and he had a girl in his vehicle named Mary Jo Kopechne. And he was a married man, and he was crossing the Chappaquiddick Bridge in Massachusetts, lost control of his car because he was drunk. His car drove off that bridge, went down into the Chappaquiddick River. He got out of the vehicle and swam to shore and ran and left Mary Jo Kopechne in that car to drown. And what happened to him? Nothing. He remained in Congress. He remained in his position. I'm just telling you that this equal in the sight of the law is what God has imprinted into this universe. And then number three, in the protection of our rights. So we're equal in the sight of God, we're equal in the sight of the law, and in the protection of our rights. Our founders disagreed with the French interpretation of equality. Let me read to you on, this is on page 104. John Adams, one of the founders, was in France when Jean-Jacques Rousseau was teaching that all men were designed to be equal in every way. This is the foundation of the French Revolution. In France, you had your haves and you had your have-nots. And there were some socialists in France that didn't like that idea. They thought everybody ought to just be on the same plane financially and in every way. That will never happen, by the way. If you took all the capital in the United States, all of it, divided it equally by the number of citizens that we have in this country, in 5 years it would gravitate back to the original owners. Because there's some people who don't know how to handle money. They don't know how to do it. All right, now, let me read you this. John Adams wrote this, that all men are born to equal rights is true. Every being has a right to his own as clear, as moral, as sacred as any other being has. But to teach that all men are born with equal powers and faculties, to equal influence in society, to equal property and advantages through life is a gross fraud, as glaring an imposition on the credulity of the people as ever was practiced by monks, druids, Brahmins, by the priest of the immortal Lama, or by self-styled philosophers of the French Revolution. Now, what the French Revolution was all about, I've heard the American Revolution and the French Revolution compared. Well, it's the same. They had a revolution. We have a revolution. It was the same thing, night and day. The purpose of their revolution was to tear down classes in society and give everybody the same thing. Anybody in here agree with that, by the way? You think we should do that? Take from those that have worked and just share it equally among... I cannot tell you how much I disagree with that. The American... It's exactly right. But now, in... Yes. Yeah. To work in his own land, yeah. All right. Principle number 7. The role of government is to protect equal rights, not provide equal things. All right, let's say you've got a man, and he's an entrepreneur. He's a businessman, and he wants to improve the life of his family. And you've got a guy over here that doesn't have that desire. He's happy to work for the guy with the business. All right, and so this man invests $500,000 in inventory in a building. This guy goes to work from 8 to 5, making $20 an hour. We do not have an equal investment. So should there be equal financial outcome? I don't think so. Now, this guy should be paid for what he does. He should be taken care of. But this is the man whose investment is on the line. And I think it is immoral for a government to come in and take this man's personal property and share it with this man who has not worked for it. Now, there are people that will call, well, that's compassionate. No, that's called stupid. See, here's what happens. If you keep picking the pockets of the producers, and everything they make is confiscated through the IRS, largest capital confiscation group in the world. They take that and they distribute, which is exactly what's happening. How long will it be before this guy over here figures, look, I can have exactly the same thing as everybody else, and I won't have to bust my rear end for it because everything I'm making is being taken anyway. How long will it be before this guy gives up and says, forget it? You know, I'm working too hard. I'm working too long. I'm putting way too much investment in this, and everything I make, the lion's share of what I make, is being confiscated and given to people that aren't working. Well, pretty soon, these guys are just going to quit. And so when the spirit of the entrepreneur in colonial America, when that was encouraged, that's when America began to explode. And in Europe, you worked for the king, like Jamie said. You worked for the king. This is a way human history has always functioned. Somebody's always in charge, and they control everything, and you work for that guy. And they will give you just enough to keep your silly self alive so you can keep pouring yourself into this guy and into his family. That's the way human governments work. In middle, late 1700s, something extremely different happened in the United States. And I'll tell you exactly why I think God exploded this economy and this country. I think God was waiting for a biblically educated people to arrive on the scene. That had never been. Now, Europe had some great preachers. They had some great authors, but that had not happened over there because their people were ignorant. These people had been duped into believing that the king was God's representative, and they did what the king... Well, over here, what we begin to realize was this. When you get out of the way, and when you remove the government from being a hurdle to people's expression of their genius and their brilliance, boom, your economy explodes. And that's exactly what happened over here. The crowned heads of Europe looked at us, and they laughed the United States. Well, we weren't the United States then, but they laughed us to scorn because we were thinking about this representative type of government. You're going to let farmers run the place? Really? Sheep herders, ranchers? And of course, they had, again, this divine right of kings over there. And so here we are. We came to this conclusion that men were created equal, and as a result of getting out of people's way and letting them follow this passion that each of them had, some people had a passion to be a farmer. Some had a passion to be attorneys or leather workers, or did we need wagon makers and wheelsmiths? We needed all of that. And so there were some people that loved doing that. And so the government got out of the way and just said to the people, go do the thing that God's designed you to do. And by 1905, the United States was the wealthiest industrial nation on earth, and the crowned heads of Europe stopped laughing at us. Matter of fact, they started losing citizens. And guess where those citizens started coming? To the United States of America. Why? Because they knew here the government was out of the way. And you could follow your God-given dream. So the role of government should be, this is the way it was designed. It is a junkyard dog to guard our God-given rights. That's what the government is supposed to do. The government is not designed to give us rights. The government is designed to guard our rights and to not let anybody, even itself. The perspective of the Constitution of the United States even starts out, we the people. That document is written from a populist point of view. Now, to whom was it written? Government. We will tell you how much government you're allowed to afflict us with. The government should be scared to death of us. But, alas, they're not, because they know that for the most part, this current generation of Americans, I think a good degree, has been beaten down with the idea that government knows everything. Government experts know everything. You know, and when you hear of something, some tragedy, what is one of the first cries that you hear from among people in the country? We need to pass a law. All we got to do is pass a law, and then that'll stop. And of course, we've talked about this before, that all the laws required to stop every gun crime in this country is already on the books. We don't need any more law to do that. The law is there. What we need to do is enforce what we have. But you understand that the goal of that is not to stop gun violence. That's not the goal. The goal is to confiscate your weapons. I am thoroughly convinced of that they're headed that way. Anyway, let's move on here. Yeah, it's gaining some speed here. Let me read.
The problem I see with socialism is it comes to the point that the people that are paying all the bills run out of money.
Exactly.
Keep giving it away to others that won't.
You're going to run out of other people's money at some point. Yeah. That's exactly right. All right. Let's talk about this thing of compassion. Compassion that creates dependency on the source is creating a form of slavery and servitude. Benjamin Franklin was a brilliant old man. And Benjamin Franklin had some ideas that I'll share with you here in just a minute. But in 1962, 11.7% of Americans were on government dependency. In 2010, 21.8% are dependent on government. You realize that's nearly a quarter of our population? And of course, you're aware that illegals that come into our country are getting government assistance. Yeah, I find that reprehensible. And you might find that compassionate I think it's ignorant.
Are they paying taxes?
Now, that's 67.3 million people living, at least in part, off of government subsidies. Did you know that prior to World War II, it was considered unconstitutional to give public funds to private citizens? Well, look what we've done now. 1 in 5 Americans are dependent on government money. Government dependency rose 8.1% in the last year. All right, now, more than 20% of the U.S. population receives public assistance. That's approximately 15% of the population receives Medicaid, and 13% were on food stamps. This is in 2016. The highest number of people on food stamps is Washington, D.C. More people are on food stamps there than anywhere else in the country. Right now, we currently have 79 welfare programs that offer cash, food, social services, education, and housing. Now, let me ask you a question. If you can make more on government programs than the standard minimum wage job, why would you go to work? What is the motive for you to work if you can make more staying home collecting government checks?
And I've heard people say that.
Yeah.
What would you do?
What do you mean?
Stay at home.
The hours
What would you do yourself?
Oh, I don't know what people do, and they have no clue. I know what they don't. I know what they don't do. Yeah, I know they don't go to work. These programs cost us over $1 trillion annually. Now, the reason I'm taking time to go over this, I want to let you know where we have digressed to as a culture. Government was never designed to be the mother of every orphan child and the husband to every single mom. That was never the purpose of government. The purpose of government was to be the guard dog around our natural God-given rights and stay out of the way while we pursue our God-given passions. That's the purpose of government. Now, if the government can become your source for everything, why would you pray to God? Why would you look to Him for your needs? You understand the goal of socialism is to replace God into people's lives. TJ?
Isn't this circumstance like a criticism against the church?
Yes, sir.
You said like the government is not made to be the mother of every orphan child, but true religion undefiled exists.
And that's you're exactly right. These are the unpaid bills of churches. Paul says, if you've got a widow, what's the first layer or first level of care for a widow? Her family. All right? Have families failed? Absolutely. And then churches, that's the next level. But there's never an arrangement in the Scripture for the government to take care of people. Nathan? Yeah. All right.
I'm thinking that video I sent you, you watched it. Andy Husner was CEO of Hardee's from 2017. That video, The Market Will Set You Free, all the graphs and all
Right.
that are right along with what
Yeah.
we've done here.
It really is. The average person who relies on Washington could receive annual benefits of $32,748. That's if you got everything that was available. That's not bad money for not working. All right. The nation's average income is $32,446. So you can make more doing that than you can working a job. 49.5% of Americans pay no federal income tax. I am very much in favor of a flat tax, or what's called a fair tax. I'm very much in favor of that. And of course, if you're listening to all these debates and all this stuff, Bernie Sanders, what is the continual cry from liberalism? Y'all aren't paying enough. Y'all got to pay your fair share. Well, why doesn't everybody pay a fair share? You know, 21%. Yes. Yep. It does. It does. 21% of the U.S. budget goes to anti-poverty programs. In order for people to become independent, they have to elect people that understand the principles that we're talking about. So in your research before elections, find out what people believe, number one, about life. And I've mentioned to you before, I'm a one-issue voter, and that one issue is life. Tell me what you believe about life, and I pretty much know what you believe about everything else. What do you believe is the financial platform for every culture and every civilization worldwide? If you think it is the government's responsibility to take care of people, I'll never vote for you. If you believe that if it is left up to the individual to exercise their God-given right to work, then we've got a connection here, all right?
Washington, D.C. last year, Ted Yoho, he was representative for the Alaska County area. He said, our budget, this budget that we argue about and come down from president, we're only talking about 35% of total budget. He said 65% is already determined with all the programs. It's just 35% we need to make a decision.
Yeah. Principle number 8. Men are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable. Anybody know what unalienable means? You cannot be divorced from those things. Exactly. Now, there are a lot of civic rights that can be changed. For instance, downtown speed limits. Say they're 25 miles an hour. Can that be changed? That can be dropped to 20. It can be raised to 30. That can be changed. That's not an unalienable right. Hunting season. I know we're getting kind of close to the marrow here. It's not an unalienable right. They could extend it. They could move it. They could cancel it. That's not an unalienable right. But what we're going to look at now is what are... Do I need to go back? When is a right unalienable? What is an unalienable right? Again, William Blackstone, the premier English authority on English law, says this: those rights, then, which God and nature have established and are therefore called natural rights, such as are life, liberty, need not the aid of human laws to be more effectually invested in every man than they are. All right, now, we're given samples of inalienable rights in the Constitution, right? Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Not happiness, the pursuit of it. So, Is everyone constitutionally guaranteed a lifetime? Think about it. Are we constitutionally guaranteed a lifetime? How do you come up with the belief then that abortion is a constitutional right? If it is one of the exampled guaranteed rights of all of our citizens, how do you come up with that? Well, Locke goes on to say, on the contrary, no human legislature has power to abridge or destroy them unless the owner shall himself commit some act that amounts to a forfeiture. Now, what are some of these rights? Let's take a look. What we're talking about is a vested right. A vested right is created by the community. It is, or the state, or the government, or whatever, and that's for our protection and our well-being. Not selling alcohol to a minor, that's a vested right. That is a civil right, all right? That's something that just makes sense to me. Vested rights can be changed with the discretion and the opinion and the mind of men. Unalienable rights, however, are rights given by God and cannot be revoked or changed by men. You don't mess with those. Now, there are more rights than are listed in the Constitution, okay? Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. These are among the... Let me read you some of the unalienable natural rights that our founders accepted as true, all right? And you don't ever hear about these. The right of self-government. Now, self-government is not the ability to elect representatives to go to Washington to represent you. That's not self-government. Self-government is when I personally, privately choose to do the right thing. I am a law unto myself. I choose not to kill you. I choose not to steal from you. I don't need a law to tell me to do that. Do you? I'm afraid of the guy that the only reason he doesn't do me wrong is because it's against the law. That's a dangerous man. All right? There's the right of self-government. The right to bear arms for self-defense. Second Amendment. It's a big, big deal in the country right now. It is a guarantee that the citizens can own and bear. You know what bear means? Carry. You know what your carry permit is? The Constitution of the United States is your carry permit. I have one. It cost me, I don't know, I had to take the class, which was about $50. I had to buy the right to carry a firearm, and that cost like $170 years ago. You got one? Okay. I would suggest, and this is heresy to some guys, I would suggest that you get a carry permit. I would suggest that you carry. I would suggest that. If you have a permit and if you have a firearm, might I encourage you, bring it to church. We have a security team out here. Every service, we lock our doors. We got armed people in here right now. And I remember when we had our security meeting, I don't know, a couple of years ago, we had like 25 people that carried to church. Now, I think it's ridiculous that this is necessary these days. When my dad was pastoring out at Eastside years ago, do you think we thought about people carrying guns in church and somebody might come in the building? No, we didn't even think about that. We're way past that right now, all right? So there was the right to own and bear arms. Number two, the right to own, develop, and dispose of property. What Jamie was talking about. I want to sell it, I can sell it. I want to keep it, I can keep it. The government does not have the right to come in and confiscate my property. The right to make personal choices. The right of a free conscience. I own a store. I'm not going to provide my employees with abortion insurance. Personal choices. No, sir. Well, it's a personal wrong choice. Yeah. But you understand that I'm reading these in the vein of 1700s. All right, TJ?
What's the old saying, like, my decision of where to put my fist in, where my fist ends, and your face begins?
Right.
We can make decisions, but we can't make those decisions unless they affect
Exactly.
other people.
Exactly right. There's the right to choose a profession. There's the right to choose a mate. There's a right to beget one's kind. The right to assemble. The right to petition. The right to free speech. The right to a free press. The right to enjoy the fruits of one's labors. The right to improve one's position through barter and sale. The right to contrive and invent. The right to explore the natural resources of the earth. The right to privacy. The right to provide personal security. The right to provide nature's necessities. Air, food, water, clothing, shelter, the right to a fair trial, the right of free association, and the right to contract. Every one of these were discussed in the 1700s. Of course, they didn't put all of these in the Constitution, but this is what they meant by natural rights. Now, all of these that I've just read to you, the government is attempting to shoplift these things and make these decisions for us. I am totally opposed to that. And I will stir our church to be opposed to those things. We have the right to a free conscience. And I think everybody here would agree. The IRS or any other government entity is not going to come to Riverview Heights and tell us what we can and cannot preach and teach. That's not going to happen. You know, well, if you continue to preach this particular doctrine, then we're going to remove your tax-exempt status. I think that's the next step, by the way. Pardon? Oh, how can they do much of what they do? By fiat. Fiat, they just pronounce it, it's done. They just take it away from you. Well, this is happening in certain quarters. They're pressing some limits. You remember in Texas just a few years ago, what was the city councilman that told the churches you have to submit copies of your sermons for approval? And of course, it got blown down because we're still, fortunately, in a time of common sense here in the country.
Double taxation. You know, we pay tax on what we get paid, and we tithe the church, and the church pays tax on that as well.
Right. So, folks, we've got some challenges in front of us. As American Christians, I think we're the freest people in the world. But we better be careful. We're going to lose that. And I think we need to get vote. I am sick and tired of preachers saying, you need to keep that stuff out of the pulpit. Well, keep it out of your pulpit if you want to. All right? Don't address these issues. Don't prepare your people for this stuff. All right? That's one of the main causes of us losing our rights is people are just, we don't want to say anything. We don't want to make anybody mad. I don't care who gets mad. I really don't. Now, it's not my goal to anger people. That's not my purpose at all. But I'm not going to surrender my rights to the state of Florida or to Hardy County or to the United States government in exchange for security. I don't need the security, the financial security of the United States or of the state of Florida. I will keep my rights. Thank you very much. I will take care of my family. You take care of our borders. You take care. I think about the only thing the government does really well is the military. They do a good job with that. And we've got some veterans in here. Thank y'all for your service, by the way. And so we're on the edge of some real paradigm shifts. And I'm just telling you, this next presidential election is really, really critical. I've never seen a time where the difference was, I mean, you talk about that. I mean, there's not even a close, well, they're pretty close. There's nothing close about what's being presented. Now, in closing, we got to go here. There are times I wish they'd take Trump's phone away from him. You know, there are times I'm like, dude, well, I know he does. You know, there are just some things I wish that he would be better at, but when I look at the options, like, oh, my word. So we have many, many more rights than are listed. I want to encourage you, get a copy of the Constitution. Read it. Become familiar. Back a number of years ago, I was reading a poll, and it was an incredible number of people thought that the right to own a dog was a constitutional right. Right to own a dog. Therefore, my right to shoot your dog will come over. I'm just kidding. Yes, ma'am.
That was what was given to us at our graduation in 1948.
What? Oh, copy of the Constitution? Yeah. Thank you all for being here tonight. I appreciate your presence. And sometimes I got to admit, it's easy for me to get off track and chase some what I think are some meaty rabbits, but they might be rabbits nonetheless. But I'll tell you, this just blood shoots out of my eyes when I start talking about some of this stuff, and I see not only what government is doing, but what we're letting them do. It's just, all right. God bless y'all. Be here Wednesday night. We're going to be in Isaiah, I think it's chapter 33, and so hope you'll be here for that. Lord, thank you for the freedoms that we have been given, first of all, by you. We could have been imprinted like animals with just instinct, no knowledge of our rights. We just act out of sheer nature. But when it came to us, you did something completely unique in creation. You impressed us with moral limits and boundaries. I want to thank you for that. I'm glad that we don't just run over each other in the road and leave us there like armadillos. That there's a sense of sanctity about life that you've given to man that you've not given to any other creature. And I pray that we would truly be self-governing, that it's not the government that tells me what is right and what is wrong, but that I myself know by this imprint, by being kin to God, that I live like you live, that I have values like your values, that I do those things that please you without ever a law telling me I need to do that. And I pray that you bless us as we travel home, watch over us and protect us. Thank you for your goodness. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.